Hi, Crime Junkies. I'm your host, Ashley Flowers.
And I'm Britt.
And today's story is one that found me about 8 months ago. I was combing through our case suggestions, and one of them just jumped out. It was from a woman down in Texas named Joleta Wilkinson, who wanted help rewriting the false narrative around her sister's death. A death that was ruled such a shameful accident in the 1980s in small-town Texas that her family didn't really speak of it. So she was never able to voice her concerns about a crime scene that she had to clean up, one that she believes pointed to murder. Now, part of her submission, I actually want to read it to you. It said, "My parents did not want to stir the pot because her past may embarrass the family and her 3-year-old son. So I told them after they passed, I would dig into the truth. They have now passed, and I feel it's time to really investigate her death, being as there are so many coincidences, discrepancies, and I hate that my nephew has lived the past 40 years believing his mom accidentally killed herself masturbating." Now, this woman came to us believing that her sister might have actually been murdered by a known serial killer, but she didn't know where to go from there. So, a few months ago, I put one of our reporters on this case, and through our own investigation, we have come to agree with Joleta. Her sister was murdered, but maybe not by the roaming serial killer she thought. Because our investigation led us to the case of 2 other women who died in this same small town, and all these women link back to one local man. So, let me start with the story of Rowena Wilkinson Zapalac. When Joleta was only 14 or 15, her family got a call from the local sheriff's office in Fayette County, Texas, that her 20-year-old sister Rowena died in her studio apartment over a saddle shop in Flatonia, Texas. It was unexpected for everyone and only made more shocking by what authorities told them. According to the sheriff's office, Rowena had died via suicide by masturbation. The rope around her neck and the dildo on her bed were the clear signs that deputies pointed to when breaking the news to her family. But when Joleta and her dad went to Rowena's apartment the day after this to clean it out, they saw so much more that, to Joleta, painted a completely different picture of what happened. Now, Rowena had only just moved into this apartment recently, so there wasn't much in there to begin with, which only made the stuff that was there stand out even more. Pennies littered the floor. There was a broken acrylic nail with blood on it, water still in the shower a day later, and a literal broken kitchen window with glass on the floor. But because it was ruled a suicide, there was a very short investigation. It was case closed basically that same day. And Rowena's family was just sort of left to accept what the sheriff said, which Joleta said was like painful and embarrassing for them. And even though her dad was seeing some of the same stuff that Joleta did and definitely had some suspicions, they just couldn't bear to push for a deeper investigation.
And also, like, 80s small town Texas, like you said, like back when it seems like most people weren't questioning law enforcement like we do now. Like, you think they must know what they're doing. And even if they don't, like, how in the world are we, normal people or whatever, supposed to change our minds?
Exactly. But just because her family didn't feel like they could rock the boat back then, and obviously there wasn't much Joleta could do as a teenager, that nagging feeling that she always had about her sister's death just grew in her as she got older. So when her parents passed away, Joleta knew that it was time to get to the truth. So the first thing she did was file a records request at the Fayette County Sheriff's Office for her sister's case file. And when she got the stuff back, she could not believe what she read in there. There was no mention of the pennies, the fingernail, the broken window.
What?
Nothing. And sure, like whatever, maybe the pennies are nothing, because the records do show that when the sheriff's deputies arrived that afternoon, they found that the door to Rowena's apartment was pushed open and there was this coffee table kind of like slid out of the way. And it turns out a friend and neighbor, the one who'd actually found Rowena, said that she knew the door didn't lock. So what Rowena would do is she would push that coffee table up against it as her way of like locking the door and staying safe. So this woman who found her and another woman had to actually like force the door open and like dislodge the coffee table. So, I mean, maybe Rowena could have had like a dish of pennies on the table. They get scattered when the door is pushed open. Again, whatever. Even if you write that off, it was right near the coffee table where Joleta found Rowena's broken acrylic nail that had blood on it, by the way. And Joleta remembers giving that to her dad, like, you know, I think this might be important.
Right.
Her dad said that he gave it to the investigators, but there is no record at all of that in evidence. So all of this stuff she knew was part of the scene because she'd seen it with her own eyes. She had been the one to clean it up. And it just wasn't even mentioned in the sheriff's report. But there was something else surprising in the reports. There were a lot of things included that she and her family never knew, like the autopsy report, which notes that Rowena's fourth right fingernail is missing, which is probably the one Joleta found.
But it wasn't found right where, like, Rowena was. And to me, that, like, points to a struggle that happens, like, that night, right?
Well, exactly. And listen, this wasn't even a huge apartment. It's basically like a studio with a bathroom, this little kitchenette. And Rowena had a couch and two beds in there, this like main bed with an iron bed frame and then this spare bed on the other side of the room. And what's interesting is they found Rowena by the main bed. The main bed and the coffee table are on like opposite sides of the room. So to me, there's no way to even say like, oh, if she was like, did something to herself, like it just came off. Like you would expect that if she lost that nail, it'd be next to her. So I agree, like this is just pointing to a struggle. Now, when they found her, she was sitting on the floor, nude, except for this thick twist-a-bead necklace and a nylon rope that was wrapped around her neck and then attached to the bed frame. Now, she had blood on her left hand and then this, they call it like a yellowish gummy substance on her shoulder and left arm. And the autopsy report also notes scratches on her neck too, which could have been from Rowena trying to like get the rope off her neck. Now, the bed sheet on the bed was like bunched up to one side, and there was a sex toy on the bed along with an open fifth of whiskey that was about like 1/5 full. And there were two pillows, one on top of another. And to the side, there was a marijuana roach in an ashtray on the bedstand. But weirdly, her tox screen that came back said that Rowena just had normal levels of a drug that she was prescribed and a 0.07 blood alcohol level. So not a lot at all. And 0 marijuana.
I mean, to me, it seems pretty clear someone else was there.
And you don't even know the half of it yet. Rowena's bed sheets had a large diluted blood stain and a small amount of sperm. And she had sperm inside of her. Her pillowcases also had specks of blood on them. And there were hairs in her bedsheet that didn't belong to her.
Sorry, and they just did nothing with that?
Not nothing. I know they tried to do blood typing with the semen, and all they know is that the semen on the bedsheet belonged to someone with, quote, H substance, which it's like, this is like a long sciencey thing, but basically it could potentially mean type O blood, but there weren't enough tests done to even rule out A and B.
So basically all the blood types are in.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like it went further than that because they said there was no sign of sexual assault. So investigators are like, well, you know, all the semen in her and on the bed proves is that Rowena had sex, might not have anything to do with her death. Which, sure, one option, like, Okay. But you want to say that there were no signs of sexual assault, which I guess to me, I take to mean like tearing or bruising of her genitals, fine. You want to write off scratches on her neck as self-inflicted because, I don't know what, she had second thoughts? Okay, fine. How about we look at the other parts of her? Joleta didn't mention this to me in her original email, but when I read it in the autopsy report, I about fell out of my chair. And now is your turn. I'm just going to have you read it verbatim.
And this is from the autopsy report? Symmetrical linear bruises are present on the inner aspect of both upper arms. The size and aspects of the bruises suggest that they were the result of the subject being gripped from behind, and the tips of fingers produced the 4 separate symmetrical bruises on each side. Ashley, what?
Yeah, gripped from behind. I mean, in my opinion, that's evidence to at least keep the option open that she was murdered.
I'm sorry, what are police pointing to say that this is a suicide? I mean, the dildo on the bed? The bed with the semen?
There are only 3 things I can find that I think might have shaped their theory.
Okay.
So in the report, there is a mention that investigators found a receipt for an X-ray in Rowena's closet. Now, there are no other notes about this or anything, so this is just like a random thought I had.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing how much they didn't note in their reports, to me, them pointing this out at all is odd.
Right.
So I'm wondering if they were like, oh, maybe Rowena got like bad medical news. Maybe she like would want to take her own life because of that.
And did they ask the family about this to confirm that?
I don't know. They only wrote that they found the X-ray receipt and nothing about follow-up. So who knows? But I asked Joleta about this now, and she told us that due to a hereditary breast tissue condition, both she and Rowena got early mammograms. And Rowena didn't have breast cancer or anything. It was like just a precautionary X-ray. So even if they had asked her parents, this was well known in the family and should have been easily explained away if they asked.
Mm-hmm.
So the second thing that I think they hang their hat on was a conversation they had with Rowena's boss, this guy named Joel, who owned the barbecue place that she worked at. And he tells police that Rowena once took an overdose of pills before. Now, Joleta doesn't know what to make of this. She says that she asked several people who knew her sister well, including like their aunt, who was the Flatonia town doctor, if this was true. And nobody else had ever heard of Rowena overdosing before or trying to.
Then how would Joel know this?
I don't know. And unfortunately, he died in 2002, so we couldn't like reach out to him and ask. Maybe he was close with Rowena. Who knows? But the third and final thing that I believe makes them so certain that this was a suicide is the report says there was no sign of forced entry into Rowena's apartment. So I think they're thinking if no one got into the apartment, then she was there by herself and it had to be suicide. The end.
But there was signs of forced entry. They just didn't write it down. I mean, the window was broken. Also, newsflash, her door didn't even lock. Like, how can you force entry in a door that's not even locked? Like, what are we doing here?
I know. Like I said, they don't even mention the broken glass. Like, it just doesn't exist to them. Now, the sheriff's report does mention something about a broken screen in the kitchen, but they say it was pushed out from the inside and that it was broken previously. Like, it wasn't from whatever happened. But they don't say how they know this.
Okay, this woman was murdered, and I've kind of never felt more sure of something, Ashley.
I know. And this is exactly how Joleta feels after she FOIAs the records. Every instinct and suspicion that she ever had was right. She knows in her bones now that someone killed her sister. The question is, who? So over the next 20 plus years, Joleta is left to just stew in this knowledge that her sister never got justice. Until 2006, when she gets a call from the Texas Rangers, and they ask her a pretty shocking question. Did Rowena know a woman named Melody Bush? Joleta has never heard the name Melody Bush before. It rings no bells, means nothing to her. But when she asks why they're asking, she gets the shock of her life. The Rangers tell her that 6 months before her sister's death, Melody Bush was murdered in the same small town. And they think this serial killer named Robert Charles Browne just confessed to Melody's murder. And they've begun to wonder, could he have been responsible for Rowena's death too?
So, wait, are they considering Rowena's death a homicide now?
This is the weirdest part to me. No.
But
I don't know how Rowena's case would have come on their radar at all these years later, because she is not listed as an unsolved homicide with the department.
Right, like wouldn't even be in like the batch of deaths they would be looking at if they were looking to connect this guy to someone else.
No, and this is years later. So like in my mind, there had to have just been like some old timer hanging around who was like, like I remember this one case.
It was kind of weird.
It is the only thing I can think of. Like Joleta doesn't even know. But when they call her, so they push her, they're like, could there be any connection between Melody and Rowena? But Joleta really doesn't think so. I mean, she even did her own legwork after this and started asking around, but no one seemed to think that they knew each other. But that didn't necessarily rule out a connection, especially the more that she came to learn, not just about the events leading up to her own sister's death, but about what Robert Charles Browne was capable of, and the circumstances surrounding Melody Bush's murder. Now, all Joleta knows about Rowena's last day comes from Rowena's friend and neighbor, this woman named Ruby Cherry, and Rowena's manager, who I'm going to call Jessica. That's not her real name. Jessica said that Rowena dropped off her son with her and borrowed her truck for the day. And Ruby said that she and Rowena went out on the town together with a group of friends, and they spent most of the night at a bar called Stag Club. Well, it turns out that almost 6 months to the day before Rowena's death, on March 19th, 1984, Melody Ann Bush was partying with her husband, Robert Bush, in a room at this seedy motel in Flatonia called Antlers Inn. And there were 2 other people there. Well, she and her husband got into an argument, and Melody left the room and walked around back to the Stag Club, the same bar that Rowena was hanging out in the night of her death. And the Stag Club is the last place that Melody is ever seen alive. 12 days later, her body gets found a couple of miles north of town off the interstate in this culvert. And the ME ruled her cause of death as acute acetone poisoning. So it was definitely a homicide.
Acetone, like nail polish remover?
Or it could have been rubbing alcohol.
Okay.
Rubbing alcohol metabolizes into acetone. Now, at the time, Melody's case is never connected to Robert Charles Browne because Melody's husband was the prime suspect in her death. But authorities never had enough to charge him.
And then Rowena's death is written off as a suicide.
Right. So it never crosses anyone's mind that those 2 cases could be connected. And people certainly weren't picking up on the fact that they had each last been seen alive in the same bar. But fast forward to 2003, that is when the El Paso County Sheriff's Office in Colorado get this creepy AF letter from Robert Charles Browne, who is already in jail serving time for 2 separate murders. And I'm going to have a voice actor read his letter.
I thought long and hard about picking an incident that would not be lost among the many others. A very small town seemed to be my best bet. Small towns don't forget such rare happenings. The town I chose is Flatonia, Texas. They don't get much smaller. The year was approximately 1984 or 1985. A young woman was killed and her body was found near this town. The last I heard was that her husband was being charged with her murder. I'm curious as to the eventual outcome. Please let me know. Afterward, we may talk some more on this. Texas does like to kill people. That should give you something to think about. Robert Charles Browne.
Robert had been sending detectives in Colorado a bunch of cryptic letters for years. One was a hand-drawn partial map of the U.S. with numbers in a few states. It was supposed to allude to the number of victims that he had across the U.S. And all in all, I think Robert's claiming that he killed 48, possibly 49 people. And he wrote the number 7 in Texas. And investigators in Colorado believe at least some of this. I mean, they know this man is capable of dark stuff. Now, we don't have time to dive all the way into him and his story now, or this episode would be 8 hours long. But I do think the information is really important, so we're doing an entire separate episode on Robert Charles Browne. That's going to be available in the fan club if anyone wants to dive deeper. Literally, the episode is out already right now if you want to sign up, crimejunkie.com. But Colorado authorities are trying to pry information out of Robert to see if they can really connect him to some of these cases. But this dude is playing mind games, and it is clear that what he's after seems to be infamy. So police start piecing together Robert's little clues, seeing if they can actually match up to real cases. And they think that his letter about a woman in Flatonia is Melody Bush. But it takes a year for them to even get him to write back about Melody. And when he does, Robert writes just the following words.
Flatonia. Ether. Ice pick.
But that's wrong.
Yeah, we know that the ME listed her cause of death as acute acetone poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
No stab or puncture wounds or anything even close to that.
Did they ask Robert if he used acetone?
Yeah, and he said that he never used it on any of his victims. And detectives are like, okay, like maybe he's mistaking ether for acetone, whatever. But when asked later by investigators about stabbing her with an ice pick, Robert doubles down. He said, yes, he wanted to make sure that he got Melody's heart. So he stabbed her at least 2 or 3 times, which just isn't in the autopsy report. But maybe we can't even trust the autopsy report or the ME's findings for Melody's death at all, because this guy, Dr. Roberto Bayardo, was investigated by NBC affiliate KXAN for literally botching autopsies. And we tried to get the report ourselves, by the way, but no one we FOIA'd had a copy of it. Now, we also spoke to the lead investigator for the El Paso Sheriff's Office, and he said that acetone was a preservative that MEs might use, and he thinks that this guy who did Melody's autopsy just maybe confused it and thought it was the cause of death. And the guy's clearly not good at his job.
Okay, but what about the potential multiple stabs to the heart with an ice pick? I mean, that's hard to miss.
Yeah, he didn't really have a straight answer to that one. But you can't say the ME got the cause of death wrong and then also say Robert Browne gave you information only the killer would know.
Right, because they don't know how Melody died
Right.
if they're saying the ME was wrong about the acetone.
Right. I think it's safe to say that they just don't have any evidence that what Robert is saying is true.
Mm-hmm.
And it took over 5 months after that ice pick letter for detectives to even get to talk to him in person. But when they do, he gives this whole story about Melody with details. He said that he was working for a flower delivery company and his route regularly took him through Flatonia. He says he stopped, got a room at the Antlers Inn, and then went over to Stag Club for a drink when this drunk woman came in wearing jeans, a blouse, and she was barefoot. He remembered that the woman said that she and her husband or her boyfriend or whatever had gotten into an argument, and she thought that he had gone to another bar down the street. And the bartender apparently asked Robert to give this woman a lift to the other bar. And Robert says, at first I say no, but then I say okay. And then as he's driving her, he says she started to put the moves on him, and they decided to go back to his motel room where Robert says they had sex. Then Robert said, quote, "Then I used ether on her, put her out, and then I used a ice pick on her," end quote. He said that he went back and forth between his motel room and the Stag Club. And after the bar closed, he said that he and the bartender went out to a local truck stop for breakfast. And then when he got back from breakfast, he loaded up the woman into his van and drove north across I-10. And then he said he dumped her body over a bridge or a culvert. He says he hears this splash and that the area was full of tall grass and water. And that's kind of it.
So that end part, that's kind of accurate, right?
Yes, and I will say that the manager at the bar the night that Melody was last seen also says some things that kind of back this up too. Her name's Florine, and she told detectives that she remembers Melody did walk in around 11:30 p.m. She was unsteady on her feet, like she'd been drinking. Now, she says she was wearing a black sweater with red hearts, silver pants, but was barefoot. So different clothing than what Robert described.
But still barefoot.
Mm-hmm. And she said that she knew Melody pretty well because Melody would waitress there sometimes, and she was always fighting with her husband.
Which is right again.
And that night, Melody seemed intoxicated and, quote, spaced out. She told Florine that she left because her husband was destroying the motel room, and she apparently didn't order any drinks and just left the bar alone. But Florine did say that she remembered a silk flower salesman that would stop by the bar once or twice a month back in 1984. He would pass out these silk flowers to the women, even gave her 8-year-old daughter some daisies, which is just sickening to think about because both of Robert's later murders were of young teenage girls. But what Florine doesn't remember is this guy, Robert, being there the night when Melody went missing. And she never asked him to give Melody a ride, and certainly never went out to breakfast with this guy. And here's the thing to know. A lot of what Robert knew and the parts that were oh yeah, that's the same, that could have been in local papers. So he could have just pieced together that information. Yeah, he was in the area at that time. Maybe he heard people talking. Maybe he was reading the news. I mean, when police asked him how he knew Melody's husband was a suspect, he said he heard it in the bar when he was passing through 3 weeks later. So to me, him knowing a couple of right things is not solid evidence to convict him of another murder here.
Right.
But there is enough suspicion that he, kind of forever, stays linked to Melody's case. Even on the Wikipedia page for him, she is listed as a possible victim.
Is Rowena?
No, because even after Rangers clearly were aware of Rowena's death and had to have at least briefly considered it a homicide.
For it to even be in this conversation.
It is still officially a suicide and has never been connected to Robert Charles Browne. But even if not officially connected, for years after this, Joleta wondered if it could be true. So again, after her parents passed away, she's like, okay, now's the time to find out once and for all. And that's why she reached out to us. And what our reporter Jenna Mell found may prove that Joleta was right and wrong. Yes, we believe Rowena was murdered. And we too think that her case might be connected to Melody's, actually. But we're not convinced that Robert Charles Browne is the most likely suspect. There's someone else that had connections to the two women who we find far more interesting. Let me start at the beginning of our investigation so you know how we got to where we did. So when we started looking at this case, I wanted to begin with law enforcement's theory, which was that this was a suicide. I see all the same red flags as Joleta, but let's at least ask the question. Is it possible that Rowena died by autoerotic asphyxiation? One thing that I found odd was the fact that she still had the twist-a-beads necklace on. And the autopsy report also says that the necklace made impressions on her neck. Now, the investigators were thinking that was because the rope was laying over the necklace, which to me raised a flag. When you take off this big beaded necklace, if you were going to put a rope around your neck.
Yeah.
And when I say big, this isn't a dainty necklace. Twisted beads are, if no one remembers them, are this thick necklace. They were a big thing back in the 80s, but you could mix and match lots of these strands of beads, and literally twist them all together.
So is it possible that she was strangled with the necklace and not the rope then?
Maybe. It's hard to say without seeing any autopsy photos, but in that case, it would be a homicide to me, not a suicide by masturbation, which is the term they had for it back then. Today, it's autoerotic asphyxiation, but same thing. But that's what they're calling it. Now, I felt at least in the cases that I've heard of, most autoerotic asphyxiation cases are associated with men. But after a little research, I found that it does happen among women as well, but there have been very few documented cases. The ratio is 50 men to 1 woman, according to a study that I read in the American Journal of Forensic Medicine and Pathology. And prior to 1980, there were only 2 cases of women who died this way ever recorded, and then a third in 1980. So super rare at the time.
And do we know anything about whether she was into that type of thing?
Well, so here's the thing. So Rowena was actually married at the time, but separated. And we talked to her then husband. His name's Thomas. So did Joleta. And he told Joleta that he and Rowena never did anything like that. Now, obviously, they weren't together when she died, so we can't say for sure if she ever tried anything different without him.
Okay, but hang on. Was her husband ever looked into?
Well, he's never investigated as a suspect because there was no one to look into.
It's not a homicide.
Even after the Robert Browne stuff, her case is never reopened, never reinvestigated. I will say, though, even if they had looked into her husband, I don't think he had any answers. I know Joleta never considered him suspicious, and he was forthcoming with us. Turns out at the time that she died, he was living an hour away. So, for all the reasons you just heard, I don't think this is a suicide or even an accident. And I don't think her ex was involved. So we looked into the man that Joleta suspected, Robert Charles Browne. Interestingly, Joleta and Rowena's husband, Thomas, both remember that Rowena was dating a guy named Rob about a year before she died. This Rob even lived with her briefly out in San Marcos, Texas, when she split with her husband. So, of course, we're like, do you remember his last name?
Right.
And listen, both of them were like, this is going to sound crazy, but we remember the last name Browne. And Joleta said she met this boyfriend, Rob, once. So she looked at a picture of serial killer Robert Browne and was like, it kind of looks like him.
Oh my God.
But both Joleta and Thomas are the first ones who told us, like, listen, please do not trust our memories 100% on this one. Like, it is very possible things have gotten twisted up over the years. And Rowena was dating this boyfriend, Rob, like, several months before her death, and they were living together in a totally different town. So it feels like a bit of a stretch.
And Robert Browne is, like, still around.
Yeah. Like, he is in prison for those other murders, like, to this day. And as you know from the Robert Charles Browne episode we did, our reporters wrote to him. And when Jen Amell wrote to him for this one, she just asked him point blank, did you have anything to do with Rowena Zapalac's death? And he wrote back,
Sorry, I can't help you. I know nothing about the person you are inquiring about. If I knew anything at all, I would tell you. I am old and near the end of my life and have no reason to conceal anything. I am truly sorry. If you would send me some funds, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you in advance. R.C. Browne.
Obviously, Jen explained that we don't pay sources and asked him a follow-up question. Did you kill Melody Bush? And Robert wrote back with the subject line, quote, no pay, no play.
Do not hide behind that tired old evasion. The courts did away with that lame excuse many years ago. If you are interested, send me some funds for my birthday or some other reason. Adios, Mr. Browne.
So Robert says that he doesn't know Rowena, and he won't say anything about Melody unless we pay him. But excuse me if I don't just take a serial killer's word for it.
Right. And not that he couldn't have done one or the other, but I feel like both is such a stretch because the MO is so like, different.
I know. It's just like the hard part to wrap your head around when it comes to him. The different MOs might actually be one of the reasons I say it was him, because like, I mean, like now, like from our other episode, dude was all over the place. Like the one victim he claimed to have strangled with shoelaces, claims another one died because he used chloroform. He talks about stabbing, he talks about shooting, blunt force trauma, like you name the horror, Robert says that he's done it. So no, like no calling card to link back to him. Like his calling card is
There's no like
habit.
signature.
Yeah. And listen, long story, not short, just like long story that we did another episode on. I'm going to cut to the chase here. The more we looked into Robert and his crimes and his movements, his MO or lack of MO, me and our reporters came to feel that it was unlikely that he had anything to do with Rowena's murder. But again, there was a murder here. So we started to ask, if not him, then who else could have done it? And that's when our reporter Jen went back to the beginning. Because if no one ever investigated, then every clue was missed by default. And right there, at the beginning, she found something that shocked us. Something that would have been totally missed if she hadn't just been deep in Melody's case, trying to connect everything to Browne. You see, we found out that before Melody went to Stag Club that night, she, like I said, was with her husband and those two other people. They're all partying in the motel room. We know Melody starts fighting with her husband about something, and then she storms out. Then the husband told investigators that he went to sleep, didn't wake up till like 6 a.m, found his wife never came back. And again, I think the husband was always like sus to people, and as far as I know, never officially cleared as a suspect. But then people kind of just like forget about him and like everything that night once Robert Browne is in the picture. But what caught Jen's attention was one of the two other people who were with them that night at the motel was a guy named Cooper Cherry. Now, Cherry's not a name that you read like every day, and it rang a bell for Jen because she spent so much time digging into Rowena's story, and it was Rowena's friend, Ruby Cherry, from across the hall, who found Rowena dead. Little bit too big of a coincidence in such a small town, so she pulled records for Ruby. Turns out she was actually once married to Cooper. So we went back to Ruby's written statement in the case file from the night that Rowena died, and it turns out she also crossed paths with Cooper Cherry.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not. So in her statement, Ruby basically went into detail about what happened the day before Rowena died. She said that before they went out to party, Rowena went with Ruby to drop off Ruby's son with Cooper. They're divorced by this point, but that's his dad. So we know Cooper and Rowena were in the same place at least once that night. Now, briefly, whatever, just crossing paths. So Rowena and Ruby go out. They're at the Stag Club. They hang out with a bunch of people they know, and Ruby actually lists all of these people. Nothing weird happened. She said they went home together around 4 a.m. The two of them live in these small apartments above that saddle shop. And then Ruby says that in the morning, Jessica, who was their manager at the barbecue place, she's the one who was watching Rowena's son, she comes knocking on her door and wakes her up. I think looking for Rowena because she's got her son. But Ruby told her that Rowena was probably still sleeping it off because they got in so late. So Jessica leaves. Sometime after this, Ruby's statement says that she goes to pick up her kid from a sitter's house. So at some point the night before or that morning, Cooper needed someone else to watch their kid for him. Where was he? I don't know. How did she know to go get her kid from a sitter and not from Cooper? I don't know. But after Ruby picks up their kid, she goes back to Cooper's house and he's got a buddy over. This guy named Bart Moore. Interesting, because if you look back at the list that Ruby gave of the people who were out with her and Rowena at the bar that night, Bart Moore is right there.
But she didn't mention that Cooper was out with them, right?
No. She explicitly lists everyone who was out. Cooper's name is not on that list. So she says that when she is at Cooper's that next morning, Cooper and Bart ask if they can go to her apartment to use her shower because they didn't have any hot water. She's like, fine, whatever. She leaves ahead of them and got back to her building just as Jessica was coming back the second time looking for Rowena. And this is when they break in and they discover Rowena's body.
Wait, does that mean that Cooper and Bart were there, above the saddle shop when they found Rowena?
I don't know. She doesn't say anything else about them in her statement. I don't even know if Cooper and Bart ever went to take showers. But it made us think back to that little detail that Joleta said she noticed when she was cleaning out Rowena's apartment the next day, that Rowena's shower was wet.
Right.
So what if Cooper or Bart did go use the shower, but at Rowena's instead?
But wasn't Rowena already dead by the time Cooper and Bart were asking to come shower?
Yes, but that is if we're just assuming that Ruby's account is totally accurate. I mean, there are other inconsistencies in Ruby's story, even in the few pages of reports we have. And just to be clear, so there are technically 3 agencies involved. So you have the sheriffs, the justice of the peace, and a little later, the Texas Rangers. And it's not like they're all opening up new investigations. All of these statements happen in the first 25 days.
And get put in the same file.
Yeah. So in her own words, the statement put into the sheriff's report says that Ruby she's woken up by Jessica at 9:30 in the morning. She goes to the babysitter's house, gets her kid, then back to Cooper's. But the justice of the peace writes in her inquest that Ruby goes to work at 11 a.m., not to Cooper's house. Then in a Texas Ranger inquest, the officer says Ruby was woken up at 9 a.m. by Jessica and then went back inside her apartment to sleep. Nothing about going to work or to Cooper's or the sitters. So why are the stories different? I mean, is it sloppy police work by all these agencies if they're not recording her statement correctly? Sure, that's an option. But it also could mean that Ruby was telling different versions of her story to different agencies. And if she did, why?
Are there statements from other people, anyone else to compare it to? The other people who were out that night, or Jessica who found her with Ruby?
So the sheriff's report says that they talked to other people, but no other witness statements were included. So we started calling people. We were trying to reach out to all of the people specifically on Ruby's list. And our reporter Jen got in touch with a guy named Red Mulholland who was out with them that night. And he told us he thinks Cooper was out with them that night.
Okay, but why would Ruby leave that out?
One option is that she forgot or accidentally left his name out. Another option is that she lied because she didn't want police to know that Cooper was there.
Just to play devil's advocate, though, my favorite role.
I know.
If Ruby knowingly lied because something happened and she was trying to cover for Cooper, why wouldn't she just leave out all that stuff about Cooper and Bart and the shower in her own statement? Like, why add them back into the story at all?
I know. And maybe it's because that's the truth and she just forgot in later statements because that's the least interesting part of her morning. Or if the later statements are accurate and they didn't come over, I don't know. I don't know why you make up that unless you wanted to give them an innocent reason for being seen around there. But then you would think you would stick to it.
Right.
So it doesn't make sense. And if we're going to question Ruby at all, this got me thinking about Joel, the owner of the barbecue place where Rowena worked. He's the one that tells the sheriff that she overdosed before, which bolsters their suicide narrative. Well, Ruby worked there too.
So maybe that story about the overdose could have come from Ruby.
I don't know, but something just feels really odd about the whole thing. Now, obviously, we reached out to Ruby to try and get her to talk. She is alive and around, but she has not gotten back to us as of this recording. We couldn't talk to Cooper himself about it because he passed away in 2023. And we even tried Cooper's brothers, his son, which is Ruby's son, no answer. And listen, when comparing Cooper to a guy like Robert Charles Browne, Cooper looks like an angel. We talked to one of his other ex-wives. He has 3 besides Ruby. And she said that he was kind, religious, and she had never heard of Rowena before. And when we talked to Red Mulholland, he told us that Cooper and Bart, they played in this band together. They liked to party a lot. But the most salacious thing on his record is a possession of marijuana charge that he and Bart got together in 1989. Other than that, he didn't have anything else, and Bart only had some traffic violations. But I thought it was interesting that the one criminal charge Cooper had, he was with Bart when he got it. But it sounds like they were besties. So we even tried calling Bart several times, but didn't hear back from him either. Which I think is a shame because he was definitely around that night and that morning, and I think he might remember something important. Because I don't know, I cannot let go of the fact that something seems very wild about Cooper being around both Rowena and Melody on the nights that they died. It could be a weird coincidence. It could be something else. My spidey senses were I don't know, feels like something else. And when we kept looking at him, there was also someone else close to him who died. His first wife, named Rhonda Stahl, she died in a questionable way back in 1980, less than 10 months after marrying Cooper. There is literally one newspaper article and an obit about Cooper's first wife's death. But here's what we know. According to the Victoria Advocate, on a late summer night, Rhonda was driving toward train tracks on a rural stretch of road between Flatonia and Muldoon when her car rolled over twice and threw her from the vehicle. The car actually rolled partly onto the train tracks and was then pushed aside by the train. Now, state troopers said that Rhonda was probably laying on the ground for half an hour before the train passed. How they know that, I have no idea. I don't know if maybe somebody on the train reported hitting a vehicle and that's how her body was discovered. But they rushed her to the hospital where she died a few hours later. And her death certificate says that she died of, quote, possible intracranial trauma, which is head trauma, but no autopsy was done.
So they just assumed that she died from the car accident?
Yeah.
And did they say how the car rolled over?
Kind of. The state trooper thinks that she fell asleep at the wheel. So physically, no. They just think that this was an accident.
A lot of questions there. Well, let me try to get this straight. Cooper Cherry is now connected to 3 women who all died in some sort of violent way.
Mm-hmm.
But this is shocking. It seems like no one has a bad word to say about this guy.
Mm-mm.
It kind of feels he's just cursed.
Yeah, that's an option. Or maybe people are scared to talk. I mean, here's the thing. In cases this old, the problem we normally face is not having any witnesses alive anymore.
Right.
That's not what's going on here. There are so many people who are still around, but for some reason, people in Flatonia are not talking. Only 3 people got back to us outside of Rowena's husband and Joleta. Or really, 2.5 people got back to us. We obviously talked to Red Mulholland, and then we talked to one of Cooper's ex-wives. And we did really briefly speak to Rowena's boss, the one that we called Jessica. She is the one that found her that day. But when I say briefly, I mean, we got her on the phone for like a minute. And I was really surprised that it wasn't longer because Joleta was the one who told us to call her. She's like, I talked to her. She remembers everything. She is definitely going to talk to you. But that is definitely not what happened.
I imagine it's probably not the easiest subject to talk about. Rowena's sister Joleta asked me to sort of look into Rowena's case. And, I mean, she believes that Rowena was killed. But I'm wondering, since you were there and you saw everything, like, do you have a personal feeling about that?
I do, but you did talk to Rowena's sister, is that correct?
Correct, yeah, Joleta.
Well, she knows everything there is to know about the outcome. As far as discussing anything about what I saw, I won't be able to do that.
Oh, why is that?
Because I've decided not to do it. I don't care to do it.
You don't care to do it. Is it
I do not wish to do it.
Okay.
I do not wish to do it, and it's personal.
Okay.
Okay? All right? She would be the person for you to talk to.
Yeah, she suggested I talk to you, though. That's the only thing.
Yeah. And that's nice, and I appreciate that, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it because
Thank you so much.
Is it because you fear any repercussions?
No, it's because exactly what I just said. I do not wish to discuss it, and that is all.
Okay, because it's an upsetting topic?
Thank you very much.
Okay, I hear you.
We don't know her reasons for not talking. And when we asked Joleta about this, she didn't really understand either. But Thomas, Rowena's husband, thinks that people might be hesitant to talk because of who they would be talking about. You see, Thomas told us that if they were going to say anything about Cooper is from a prominent family in Flatonia. Like his dad owned a big ranch out in Muldoon, and they had several oil wells. He sat on the board of the town bank, which was a powerful seat.
And are there still Cherries around locally?
Yeah, there are. But I want to be clear, there's nothing that we found to suggest that Cooper's family would threaten people. And we couldn't ask them anything because none of them have spoken to us. But to understand the implication here, Thomas gave us a little background, just like in his own experience and like his life. So him and Rowena were high school sweethearts when they got pregnant really young with their son, Brandon. Thomas was from a prominent family as well. His dad actually sat on the same town bank board. Like he knows this world. And Thomas was like, look, nothing against Rowena, but she was a runaway and we got pregnant. And I'm betting that wasn't my dad's idea of a dream life for me. You know, they weren't happy, but they supported their decision to get married and to do right by his child. And so they supported them financially when Thomas went to college. And he said Rowena was a good mom and she loved her son. But it did get to the point where it was all too much. Like Rowena didn't want to grow up so quickly. She wanted to be young. She wanted to have fun, go out, see other people. She's 20, remember? So she and Thomas split up, but they never actually divorced. Now, he said that he knew most of the people who were out with Rowena that night, but he didn't know Ruby. He did know Cooper. I mean, they'd partied together, but they're not like best friends or anything. And, you know, as we were talking to Thomas and he tells us the thing about like their dads being on the bank board together, like you could see like the wheels start turning in his head. And he's like, you know, Cooper was always getting in trouble. And like that might not have been a good look for his dad. So He's like, I could see a world where Cooper doesn't have more of a record because when you have the right connections, life is a bit easier for you. If Cooper had anything to do with the deaths of Melody or Rowena or Rhonda, like, nobody in his family would, I mean, again, this is like the kind, nobody wants anyone to know that kind of stuff.
Right.
So there's like all this smoke, but there is no fire. Though at the end of the day, the one thing that is excruciatingly clear is that authorities need to take another hard look at Rowena's case. She thinks Rowena's son, Brandon, deserves to know what really happened to his mom. Rowena was so young when she died. She was a talented rodeo rider, a kind, fun person, and a mom just trying to figure out how to give her son a good life. And we believe that someone decided to cut that life short, and the Wilkinson Zapalac family want justice. Joleta started a petition asking Fayette County to change Rowena's death certificate from suicide accident to homicide, because that would then allow the authorities to reopen her case.
Right.
We are going to include the link to Joleta's petition in the show notes if you guys want to sign it. And if you have any information on the deaths of Rowena or Melody Bush, please contact the Fayette County Sheriff's Office at 979-968-5856, or you can email us, tips@audiochuck.com. You can find all the source material for this episode on our website, crimejunkie.com. And if you want to listen to more episodes like this, and all of our episodes completely ad-free, be sure to join the fan club. You're also going to get early access to all the new episodes and a ton of bonus episodes.
And you can follow us on Instagram at Crime Junkie Podcast.
As usual, we'll be back next week with a brand new episode.